Hey everyone, my name is Julie Burt. I'm here to do my video lesson on apple cutting. So the first part of my lesson is that I'm doing the lesson that I'm submitting as part of a whole unit on apples and fall. So this lesson is one part of the unit, focusing on apple cutting and continuing to build on the knowledge of apples that my students have been working on maybe for the past week or two in the early fall, the beginning of school. So the first part of my lesson is reading this book, The Season of Arnold's Apple Tree by Gail Gibbons. So this book is about all the seasons of the apple tree. And the introduction of the apple tree. The little boy discovering it. Then the apple tree in the spring. Arnold taking care of his apple tree. The apple tree in the summer, getting ready for its peak season in the fall. Then it's fall, peak season for apples. So they're baking and cooking with all the apples. He's celebrating Halloween. Then it's winter. And he's still taking care of his apple tree. And then we're back to spring again. My case study student, her name is Ava. She's 4 years old. She's in a pre-K for all class. I'm focusing on her language and speech delays. She actually has an IEP, so we would be working on her IEP goals, which one of them is answering questions, depth of knowledge questions based on a text, a read aloud in the large group. Cook, Klein, and Chen say that speech and language development depend on the ability not only to receive incoming auditory information, but also to process, organize, and store it, which is something that I'm looking for Ava to do, is take in the information from the story and respond to questions about it. So after the read aloud in the pre-K for all classroom, we go to centers. The children choose their centers. They plan their play. They plan their center choice time. So one of the choices that day would be a small group apple, creating an apple for the bulletin board using various art media. And art skills. So one of the skills we're looking at is the fine motor skill of cutting and use of scissors. That small group would be facilitated by the teacher, just to help the students. The text would be available in the center as a reference. If the children want to hear it again or reference it for their apple. Like I said, this lesson is part of a unit. So we've been working with apples. Apples have been in the classroom. They've touched them, felt them, tasted them, worked with them. You know, I'm hoping that there would be a field trip involved for apple picking to actually see apple trees. You know, the other thing about that is, with that teacher facilitation of that lesson, you know, children with limitations in overall cognitive development need thoughtfully planned, individualized opportunities and challenges. Children who have mild to moderate intellectual disabilities often are able to learn to talk and understand speech and language in the expected sequences, although at a slower pace. It is especially important to provide these children with a language nurturing environment that gives input that is developmentally appropriate to their language and cognitive level. So that's what I would be looking at in the small group for all the children. So the children would come to the table, and this would be what was available to them to work with. I might have some already cut out, just to help that process. So I would have crayons, markers, paint available at the table. Another thing that helps with fine motor is for the children to tear paper. We've been setting red, green, and yellow apples, so all those colors would be available. They would tear the paper, and then they would glue it on to the apple. So then, different textures would be available for them to work with. Just as a preschool teacher, we would cut it out first, put their name on it, then they could decorate it. It's just easier that way. It gets heavy with glue and paper and heavier things on it. And in early childhood, it's about the process, not the product. And then, the cutting. We really have to be prepared for those who can cut and those who can't, and, try to have all options available. And encourage ones who want to cut who might not be able to cut. We need to encourage that the best we can. And because it's a small group and teacher facilitated, a lot of talking, which is the speech and language part, would be going on, talking about what the child is doing, talking about their apple, trying maybe to get them to share words, color, shape, texture of the apple. How does it feel? Maybe questions about the text. Then at the end of the lesson, after center time, we gather back on the rug, and I always invite everyone who wants to share their work and talk about it. That's also encouraged for them to share their process. This is focusing on my case study of Ava, who needs to speak in sentences, use different tenses, communicate, become comfortable speaking in front of a group, communicate to her teachers that she's understanding so that we can plan accordingly for future lessons. Cook, Klein, and Chen say that instructional objectives for language development should also be based on the functional needs of the child. Conversations about familiar things that interest young children are a critical tool in helping them to learn communication skills. Children's first verbal labels or names are of objects, people, events, and actions they know and can associate with. Unless they are truly interested and can make associations, they will not attend, and attention is a prerequisite for learning. So, that's my lesson. Like I said, fleshing out this lesson, I see it as a lesson that takes maybe a day or two in a whole unit about fall and apples and being seasonal. Children, referencing the text, children have been exposed to the apples. Apples are used as labels in their cubbies, labels on the tables, labels on the chairs with their names on it. So we can, have a really vested interest in, just that theme and pulling it all together for the season. Thank you.